Walk Two Moons, chapters 17 to 20. Chapter 17, In the Course of a Lifetime. Finally, the grandparents have left the hospital. They're back on the road, and Sal starts telling Phoebe's story again. One day when Phoebe and Sal get home, they find that Mrs. Winterbottom has been super unhappy and crying. She sits at a table in front of a tray of burned brownies. She offers Phoebe the brownies, but Phoebe gets angry with her, yelling that she's getting fat and the brownies are burned. At this point, Prudence comes into the room, and she's also really wrapped up in her agenda. Her mom wants to watch her cheerleading tryouts, and Prudence is really rude, and she says that would be awful. I'm gonna ask you to pause here and go back to the book and answer this question based on the events of chapter 17. Right after this, they find another message at the door of the Winterbottom house, and it says, "In the course of a lifetime, what does it matter?" Mrs. Winterbottom gets really upset by this, but Phoebe and Prudence don't even notice how upset she is. What do you think this means? According to Sal, what are some of the things that will definitely matter over the course of a lifetime? And what are some of the things that just won't matter? Chapter 18, The Good Man. Sal pauses in her story here to give us some background information about her dad and finally tells us the real reason why her mom left. In the chapter, Sal describes her father as incredibly thoughtful and good. Can you find some examples of his kindness and good behavior? Go back to chapter 18 and try to find 3 examples. Because of Mr. Hiddle's generosity, Sal's mom always feels like she's not good enough, and she's always comparing herself to Mr. Hiddle. She even tells him, "Sometimes I don't think you're human." And this ties back to why Sal's mom leaves. She says she just feels really bad all the time, comparing herself to Sal's dad, and she needs to leave to figure out who she is. And she tells Sal that she will be back before the tulips bloom. Soon after this, they find out that the mom is never going to come back, and Sal's dad starts getting letters from Margaret Cadaver. Sal hates this. Sal's dad decides at this point that it's time to move to Euclid, Ohio, and Sal throws tantrums because she really doesn't want to move. But Sal's dad insists that they have to leave because he says he's being haunted by Sal's mother day and night, and they have to get out of there. Do you think it was wrong for Sal's mother to leave? Why or why not? Chapter 19, Fish in the Air. And now we're back to Phoebe's story again. There is a lot of jumping around in this story, so just be careful to keep track and be sure where we are and whether it's a flashback or not. In this chapter, Sal finally wants to talk to her father about Margaret, but she doesn't want to hear anything he wants to say about her. She's more interested in telling him why he should keep away from her and how she's really spooky, and her father's not impressed. He's like, "Sal, you're trying to catch fish in the air." I'm gonna ask you to pause for a minute, explain what it means to catch fish in the air. What figure of speech is this? One day, Sal and Phoebe are walking back home from school, and they run into the lunatic, and they're very scared. They freak out. They run home, and Mrs. Winterbottom tries to calm them down, but it's pretty clear that she's upset as well. Chapter 20, The Blackberry Kiss. Chapter 20 starts with Sal writing in her mini journal because she has an assignment from Mr. Berkway. And Sal ends up writing about her mother, and she remembers how her mom used to eat blackberries and go and hug and kiss trees because she loved them so much. Sal tells us that ever since then she does the same thing. She's kissed lots and lots of trees, and every time she does that, she can taste blackberries and she remembers her mother. After school the next day, Ben tricks Sal into thinking that he can read palms, but all he really wants to do is to hold her hand. And then he surprises her by kissing her ear. Back at Phoebe's house, they discover that Phoebe's mother, Mrs. Winterbottom, has left, and she has left 3 notes. 2 of them are for her daughters. What do Mrs. Winterbottom's messages to her daughters say, and what do the messages show about her? At this point, Phoebe completely freaks out and she thinks that her mother has been kidnapped by the lunatic, and she's totally convinced about it, even though her father doesn't believe it. Later that night, Sal tells her dad about what happened at the Winterbottom house, and she tells her dad, she says she's coming back, but I don't believe it. Her father says, people usually come back. This gives Sal some hope and makes her think that maybe her mom could come back home too. I'm gonna kind of pause there and ask you 2 questions. The first is, do you think Sal is right? Do you think her mother will come back? And the second is, why do you think Mrs. Winterbottom left? Where do you think she went?